On this week's episode, why pop culture journalism is in the news. The plot thickens with MoviePass, and what are they? I said, yeah, okay. I said thickens. Let's try it again. On this week's episode, why pop culture journalism is in the news. The plot thickens with MoviePass, and what are they thinking with the Oscars? All this and more when we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back for another episode of the PCC Multiverse. My name is Joe Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you listening to all of our programs. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. He is, the headmaster of the exciting, the enthralling, the actual book session, my friend. School is in session.
Yes, and Humanican Media, as we all know, is a school of magic full of just lots of cool things. Actually, just two things at the moment. But growth is there. It's coming. It's gonna be.
Just don't turn me into a frog, please.
Transfiguration doesn't actually start until junior year, so you're good.
Thank goodness indeed. But it is a great show we've got for you today. We are going to be talking why pop culture journalism has hit the news at the forefront of what's going on in the news items. We're going to be talking about how the news in the pop culture different form. Plus, also as well, I'm going to be talking to I'm going to be talking to Chris Daly from Fresh Media Works. We're going to be talking about the never-ending saga known as the struggles for MoviePass. By the way, did you see the article the other day in regards to the fact that even though they are struggling, they're barely able to pay off loans? They're thinking about, they're in the process of funding a new movie starring Bruce Willis.
I did see that, and I did rant about it a little bit. One, they not only don't have the goodwill of the fans, and their earning reports have just been terrible, but they don't. Why is a company that sells movie tickets going to get into movie creation? They don't have any existing streaming platforms of any any kind, and they're still kind of testing the waters. So why create their own movie studio? That just seems like it's not a great idea. It's not a great business model for an already failing business.
Well, let's hope that if it does come to fruition and that Bruce Willis movie does come out into the big screen, that MoviePass, if it's still in some form or another by the time it comes out, the customers of it will actually be able to get to see it the first weekend, unlike some other films that they've prevented their customers from seeing. So just let's hope that that's the case. But also, we're going to be talking as well with Jason Todd Feinberg, because one of the movies, speaking of which is coming out this weekend, is Slender Man. And as our resident horror movie expert, he's going to be shedding some light on the actual movie itself, his thoughts on what about this whole Slender Man mythology, talking about his choices that you should target in your upcoming fantasy football draft when it comes to the running back position as well. We do have a great episode, like I said, lined up. But first off, Josh, we talked at length this weekend back and forth about certain things that happen in pop culture journalism that's in the news. I want to ask you first, what do you want to delve into, plagiarism or The Escapist? Which one do you really like to hear of first?
Well, okay. I think The Escapist could be, just because the news on The Escapist isn't really as deep, I guess, as IGN. It's more of a question of, can journalism exist, video game journalism especially? Can you be a journalist in this field in 2018 and not have a political opinion or push an agenda through your articles? So just a little backstory. The Escapist, I think I never really read a lot from them. I got some stuff from them, but they were kind of before they're kind of before my time, I wanna say. Like, I was, not really a huge fan of them. I knew they were around, but anyways, they got purchased by a Canadian media company, and they made an announcement saying that they would be coming back. And basically what this Canadian company did, they went in, they revamped everything, they got rid of a bunch of staff and, are not rehiring, but they're hiring new people. So it's almost a completely new brand, just keeping the name, keeping the fan base. And they're saying that we are going to deliver video game journalism without or video game and tech journalism without politics. So I just it leads me to this question because even like bigger companies, IGN, Kotaku, Polygon's especially bad for this, is having everything is layered with politics. And even having to do with video games, there's a lot of like social themes in video games, obviously. But uh, do you think it's possible to be a journalist in 2018 and not have a political opinion or push an agenda of some kind in the things that you write? Because it bleeds through in all types of journalism, though, whether it's media or whether it's about like celebrities or video game gossip columns, whatever it is, there's always something political at play. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I've told you it's possible because I wanted it to be a diversion, a friendly, welcome diversion to what everybody hears all day long on the government, whether it's the US, Canada, Mexico, wherever you're from, Europe, Japan, anywhere you go. I wanted to try and be a nice, friendly, warm reminder that there's a lot of great entertainment out there that is an escape. Sorry for the pun on the escapist there, but is an escape for people. I want to do it as much as I can here on the show. I know for the escapists, that's going to be even harder because you have to report on things from time to time, like, let's say, the Gamergate issue, which is a big issue because of the fact that there should be gender equality across the board and people should be treated fair and with respect. And there are those that have an agenda that goes against that, and shame on them for doing so. And when I say that, even in my opinion alone, I bring politics into the fray, which I just, whether it's equal rights, whether it's the government, whether it's some aspect of it, they do touch on those subjects, whether it's a game they're reviewing or it's a policy or a news item that they're covering as well.
Yeah, no, I think that it's a bad idea though because it's kind of polarizing, but at the same time politics have been so infused so deeply in the very fabric of video games that it's hard.
Well, I will say this. It was a long time ago, even earlier this century, where games press, pop culture press, that then when they covered the industry in and of itself, they didn't have to go ahead and reach out to politics, or they didn't have to go ahead and have politics bleed into their content. I never saw it. I never really thought much about it as far as when I was looking at those sites earlier this century, or even in the 90s or what have you. It is at this point in time almost unavoidable for any stretch of the imagination for any large outlet to be able to avoid politics of any kind.
Yeah, but they shouldn't be specific about it though. Like I get it. Like I totally get it. You have to dive into, especially like if you're talking about a game like Wolfenstein, which is, people are saying are one of the most socially important video games of the past 10 years. So I totally understand that, but with journalism, like video game journalism, especially a site like IGN, gamers are so, we've talked about this before. Gamers are unique. There's no like two gamers that are the same. Everyone has such a wide variety of beliefs, and they're whether or not they're willing to stand up and defend those beliefs, that's another story in itself. But like they're a very I don't know, sorry, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but they have a lot of different beliefs and they come from a lot of different backgrounds. And it's dangerous to say, like, even just to point out, like, and IGN sometimes does that where they'll point out like certain senators or whatever who made like a backhanded comment about video games or something, and then like that isolates
or if they go after a certain video game or a certain entertainment property into either a collective as far as trying to get it banned or what have you, and using that as, or when it comes to a unfortunate shooting of some type, video games always seem to get drawn in. Not the entertainment, as I always try to say it, as a whole should get drawn in if you're going to just bring in the video game debate. But the video games themselves always seem to get singled out instead of the whole entertainment spectrum as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's just something that doesn't it should it I get it that it's going to be in game journalism, but it should be in it as little as possible. Like for example, there's we talk about Kind of Funny a lot on here, and those guys are all, I don't even know if you count them as journalists anymore. They just kind of talk
Well,
about.
if you read the story on Polygon in regards to Greg Miller, he doesn't like to refer. I don't believe he likes to refer to himself as a games journalist.
Yeah. So anyways, they had a podcast out, and they're talking about, the podcast was called The World Really Sucks Today, and it's they're all talking about politics and immigration, all this stuff, and during all of them during the course of this conversation go on to say that they read all these headlines but didn't actually read the articles. So when you're getting stuff like that, then that's when it takes it into the realm of uninformed opinions, and that's the kind of thing that really does isolate people. So I don't know, there's a huge spectrum of things that need to be addressed as politics are slowly bleeding into gaming. But at the same time, it's you got to remember that it's isolating. There are gamers who sit on the right, there are gamers who sit on the left, there are gamers who try to sit in the middle, but eventually there's going to be like a break, and a schism, I guess. And you got to be really careful, because especially these days, if you want to gather a social media following, you're going to talk about politics, because that's how it's done. Everyone on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, they want attention, and how they get it is they do it by talking about things like racism, or they say bad things about Trump. Not that he doesn't deserve stuff like that, but you do get into territory that you shouldn't be in, because you're a games person. You're not a politician, and that's very dangerous territory, especially since we were taught in in national university, we were taught the most important thing is to be unbiased. So talk about the political opinion, but don't take the opinion yourself. But that brings me back to the escapist is, I've been thinking this over. I don't think it's possible, man. I don't think it's possible to be a journalist in 2018 and not, especially like if you have to address a political thing like we were talking about, and not have a political opinion about it, because even if you don't, somebody's going to pick something out of there, and they're going to make it seem like you believe one thing or another. So it's very dangerous, very, very dangerous.
It is, especially if you want to aspire to be a top ranking, high volume traffic site. People are going to gravitate to that type of content and material. Obviously works for sites like Kotaku and Polygon. And I do want to mention again, if you want to learn more about if you want to learn more about Kind of Funny's Greg Miller, who's from IGM fame, and also like Josh said, Kind of Funny. Again, I want to stress that someone who I've interviewed in the past, a great reporter for Polygon, Colin Campbell, he did a huge cover story on Greg Miller. So give it a check out if you want to learn more about his background and what Kind of Funny is all about. But be that as it may, enough for the free pub for them. Hopefully one day they'll give free pub for us. But anyways, I want to go into the fact that it's just a matter of where do you want to go with your coverage? And unfortunately, it's going to bleed over. The politics and the way our world is shaping now, politics is just bleeding over into everything. Your opinions, your thoughts, everything is under a microscope. Social media has not made, in many ways, things better. It's also made things a lot better as well at the same time, but it also puts everything under a microscope, and everything you say and do is now just magnified just 100-fold over what it was maybe even 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it like I said, The Escapist is taking a big chance by trying to be a diversion away from the other sites that are going to focus at least some part, and in case of a major part of their coverage as far as the political spectrum, as far as gender, racial, or ethnic, or any type of coverage that they offer on those sites. Escapist is going to try and avoid it. And is it for the best long term? I'm not sure of that. But hey, that's the way they want to do it. Maybe we should get jobs there, man. Maybe we should apply. Hey, guys like us, we may actually work out best.
Hey, well, hey, you get some applications, let me know. But so I don't know why I always say the danger is that people are going to keep, good for them. God bless them. That's I respect it. The problem is that people are going to hold them to it. So the moment that something even smells slightly political, there's going to be not just like a Reddit thread about it, but there's going to be,
Oh, there's going to be a lot of comments on it. Yeah.
yeah, even like this is the kind of thing that even like, these big publications are talking about are probably going to be reporting on it. Like, I see a headline on IGN maybe that says, escapist breaks their vow or whatever. Yeah, it's just that's a bold statement, and people are going to hold them accountable for it.
I know in our writing that we've done both for yourgamesource.com and now popculturecosmos.wordpress.com and our upcoming site, we, for the most part, have been able to avoid a lot of that. I know with your deep introspectives that you've touched upon, that goes into something a little bit different. But when it comes to our video game, film, electronics, technology stuff that we do, we do a pretty good job of trying to avoid that because it doesn't seem like it's a necessity when we do that. But that's not going to say that, hey, you tell me one day, hey, I'm going to go ahead and do something on Gamergate, or I'm going to do something on this type of treatment as far as this in the gaming industry, or this type of government action against the movie industry. If you want to write an article about it, you want to go ahead and do it, by all means. I mean, if you feel that that's the case and you think it's for the betterment of our audience, then by all means as well. So you don't want to hamper yourself, but I understand they're trying to make a niche back into the marketplace, and maybe it's out of frustration. Maybe it is just because it's a strategic move of some type. But the escapist claiming and the escapist proclaiming that they're going to be from this point forward not posting anything really of any political type nature, that's something that's really going to be hard for them to stick to in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. It's just the nature of the beast, man. And a moment ago you'd said that politics have made a lot of things better, but not politics, but social media. But social media is also,
and it's made a lot of things worse at the same
made a
time as
lot of
well.
things worse. Yeah, so that should be covered too. But like, I remember there's a time when social media was filled with people just making random. I still use it to make random statements, and not even about politics, just like stupid things that I hope will bring some joy to somebody's day.
Like you pulling up by a car that looks like yours.
Yeah, exactly. And there used to be like cat video. There's still a lot of cat and dog videos and stuff like that. But yeah, now it's like every other post has something to do with politics. And we covered this on Topicocalypse on an episode called "Politics Are Ripping Us Apart." It's this idea that even if you do have a well-informed political opinion, there's just a lot of people talking and not a lot of people doing anything about it. It's just a lot of people. I can sit here and complain about Donald Trump till my face turns blue, but if I'm not out there actively trying to make a difference in things, then I'm just another thing in the static.
Keyboard warrior.
Keyboard warrior, exactly. But anyways, yeah, let's move on here.
Well, games journalism came up in the news again this week. Well, I'm sorry. Pop culture journalism came up again this week in the news when the game Dead Cells, which is which is a highly rated, very well thought of, very critically praised platform game, which just came out. It's available on many major platforms. And from what I've seen of the action and what I've seen in detail from the actual reviews, I think a lot of people should give this a chance and an opportunity, because it could be one of the games that reaches out for the game of the year. And I know Josh and I are going to be talking about that here coming up in a future episode about game of the year possibilities. But yeah, if people are out there, give Dead Cells a try, because I hear really good things about it. One of the places I heard really good things about it was an actual review by IGN. And this review by IGN was from, What's the writer's name? Oh, was from Philip Mayusin. Was from Nintendo editor for IGN, Philip Mayusin. Unfortunately, it was pulled down almost a day later. Well, actually, it stayed up almost a day. It was pulled down, the YouTube review, plus also the written review, after complaints of a possible plagiarism from a YouTube reviewer who actually reviewed the game, I think, a few days prior. And if you look at the transcripts, word for word, almost, it was the same. Pretty much the same review in many points, in many paragraphs, not just a sentence, not just a few words, but in paragraphs. There were many similarities. So I ask you, my friend, we've had this issue before a long time ago with your game source, and I've tried to be, as well as the former editors for us who've done an outstanding job, such as Sarah Martinez, Stephanie Johnson, and myself. We've tried to make an effort to try and avoid plagiarism of any kind. We did encounter one episode where someone turned in something to us and it was blatant, and we notified that individual we were not going to run the story, not going to run the review or article on that. And I still check for it time to time with certain writers and whatnot. So I ask you, my friend, when it comes to things like that, especially from what we were talking about earlier, high traffic locations such as IGN, what does that say about the pop culture and game journalism as a whole when we resort to tactics like that? Because the individual himself was fired the next day.
If you have a problem with my plagiarism, you should just come out and say it.
I'm sorry, say that again. I have a problem with plagiarism?
I said, if you have a problem with me plagiarizing our game reviews, you should just come out and say it.
Well, the fact that you can't even do it right and ends up being your own original content, that shows right there that man, you're just incapable of plagiarism in itself, because you can't even do it right.
I can't even plagiarize right. Jeez. What is this world coming to? Okay, so this one's interesting because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, reading a lot of articles on this. What he took the content from Boom Slang Games or something, Boom something or other.
Boomstick Gaming.
Boomstick Gaming, yeah. And the guy was pretty humble about it. Like he went onto the Reddit thread and said, "Hey, I think IGN just they just plagiarized one of my game reviews. What do I do?" And then IGN, they were quick to respond to that. Like
Well, he also put up a video showing the comparisons of the reviews as well, which got over 100,000 hits.
Yeah, and they were quick to put up the they were quick to put up, like, take the video down and put up a statement saying, "Hey, we're investigating this." And it was I don't know, it was odd to say the least. So at first, like, I wanted to really give this guy the benefit of the doubt because or what's his name, Philip Mewson or whatever. Because in gaming journalism, you are using a lot of the same words. You're using, Metroidvania, roguelike, things like that. You're using a lot of the same words to write game reviews. So it's hard to really throw something out there that's different. Like I try to approach different in my game reviews by talking more about the story than about like the technical stuff behind it, because I find that stuff more interesting. But so I started digging into this a little more. Here, let me pull up the what was it, the article on this.
But there were, when you see it in certain articles, they show that there's paragraphs literally almost lifted word for word from the actual Boomstick Gaming review, and that was transplanted onto this IGN review by Philip Mewson.
Yeah. So, and the more you look at it, the more the similarities are like, okay, this has got to be more than a coincidence. But it's also one of those things where you had kind of like you watch shows and you find out that cops were dirty, and so like all the cases that cop has worked, they turn into a storyline where all that stuff gets undone and you have to deal with the repercussions of this. In this case, they had to go back and look at all the articles that this guy's written and found out that he had not only plagiarized this one, but he had plagiarized several others. So this puts you at a point where, like, it's not IGN's fault. I get it. Like IGN is more than one person. They had just had one guy screw up, but you know,
Well,
I
but what gets me is that he's an editor. So
right,
not
right.
is he just a writer? He's not just a freelancer throwing something at them. From a like for me, it would be a remote operation because I'm aspiring to be a freelance writer. This was somebody that was in house editing, and nobody overseeing that editor actually took notice of his plagiarism for, like you said, several articles.
Yeah, so it's and again, like it sucks because it makes a lot of other people look bad. And IGN's kind of they're the big shark in the aquarium, but in- I I feel bad for the people that work for IGN mostly. And at the same time, as the big shark, you are held to a higher standard and you do have more responsibility when it comes to making sure that things like this don't happen. And like I was saying before, the guy who was plagiarized from, like he was very humble about it. He just said that he wants to be compensated for his work. He didn't want the guy to get fired, but he did Philip Mewson did get fired. And he really will not ever work in the industry again. And like we were talking about with our journalism classes, like that was another thing they taught us was super important, was to never plagiarize anybody else's work, because that's just it's not just lazy journalism, but it's wrong.
And this has been a bad year for IGN after the fact that they just recently got out of a harassment scandal with some high up editors as well. So it's not been a good year for IGN. But wait, does that mean I can't plagiarize from your reviews as well?
Only the stuff that I got wrong you're allowed to plagiarize.
Well, I am in the process of finishing up a article with some reviews that both you and I did off of our recent Game Source podcast, but it does transcribe your thoughts with quotation marks. So it's not plagiarizing as a whole, but it shares your thoughts on it, whether they want to hear it on our podcast, which will be available on the page, or you can just check it out now, the Game Source podcast on our Pop Culture Cosmos channel, or they want to read your thoughts right there. So it's something that is different than what's been talked about. So because they're your thoughts and I'm crediting them to you.
Yes, so you can check that out soon. Definitely, we're working on some big things. So
Absolutely. And I want one last question before we go on with the rest of the show. Does this mean that maybe there's some cracks showing and cracks forming with IGN as a whole, and maybe their days as, like you said, the big shark in the aquarium, maybe maybe done sooner than we think?
I think maybe the goodwill from the fans is going to crack, but just the fact that IGN has so much money backing them and all these smaller publications don't, it's hard to really say that for sure. I know a lot of people are now turning to YouTubers or smaller gaming outlets because you get an opinion on a game that's not corporatized, but it's more personal because they're not being told to write. They're writing what they want basically, as opposed to, and I don't think IGN's in anybody's pocket, but it it's hard to say for sure because we're not in the upper echelons of IGN. So, a place, for our website, we get to basically say what we want because there's nothing, we're not trying to sell a game. We're not trying to keep the goodwill of any game development companies. It's just we have a freedom of thought that, these bigger publications don't.
But if we do get sent review codes, we try to do our best to mention that, hey, we were sent these review codes by the individuals involved, whether it's a developer, whether it's a PR company, whether it's a publisher, what have you. In fact, we're trying to go ahead and reach out to other video game public relations firms and also board gaming ones as well. And I recently got also some technology stuff as well that I'm currently in the process of reviewing as well. So, but I try to mention that, hey, they send us the stuff, but they didn't tell me whether or not they didn't tell me I had to go ahead and give it the score, any of that score. I just freely just judge it the way I see fit. So that's always a good thing when they don't mention. The only thing they usually mention to us is you can only post a review at this point in time, and as far as the embargo dates and all that. So that's always a good thing when you only hear that that's their only guidelines. It's just an embargo date. Are we one of those YouTube streamers that have been compensated or any of that other stuff that's always been a kind of sketchy past? When I know you and I've even talked about that in the past in regards to YouTube YouTubers praising a game when you know they're being padded by the publisher and or developer. Those are kind of sketchy things as well, don't you think?
Yeah, because it's not biased. I mean, it's not unbiased. You're trying to sell a game. You get a taste of, a little paycheck, and you're like, "Ah, yes, this is great." So I'm basically gonna just make up lies about this game. But it's into there literally, like, there is no journalistic integrity left anymore, and that's what makes me sad. So I'm hoping that we never get to that point. Though we would like to eventually, be able to build this into something bigger. I would never want to sacrifice my integrity as a journalist to bring, to stay in the pockets of a gaming company.
So if EA came to you tomorrow and dished out the zeros, you wouldn't say Mass Effect Andromeda is the game of the year for 2017?
No, no, probably not, because I can't say Mass Effect in its current form. I can't say that I've played it. I can say I played it back when it was buggy, but from what I understand now, it's a whole different game. So I would have to play it first before I got that opinion down. But EA is just somebody who I don't really have a lot of respect for.
EA, you didn't hear that. We kind of like your contributions. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're right. You're right. The conscience would get the best of me, and I would have to do the right thing and say yes. I would uh, do it as respectfully and honestly. And if we're compensated by any publisher or developer and or whatever, we'd obviously have to indicate that first before anything is ever said and done regarding their products. But it's nice to get that kind of paycheck, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, I agree, but we're not helping our case here.
No, we're not. No, we're not. And this will be convenient. And this will be edited off the podcast, but don't worry about that. Send your checks to. No, I'm just kidding. What are your thoughts on the actual goings on in pop culture journalism? Do you like politics bleeding over into it, or do you like your pop culture journalism separate from what you see and hear in the regular walks of life? Do you think it's actually something that pop culture journalists can avoid, whether it's gaming, whether it's film, whether it's television, what have you? Or do you think that it's something that's unavoidable in any stretch, with the relationship between politics and pop culture? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Humanica Media and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. Well, like I said, it's going to be a great episode we have for you today. We've got Chris Daly from Fresh Media Works coming up right afterwards. Then we got Jason Todd Feinberg from Hunting Queen. Also, Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Pater podcast. It's going to be a great episode we've got for you today. It's all coming up right away. Plus, at the end, Josh and I are going to be asking ourselves, what's going on with the Oscars and why are they even doing this now? We're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be talking about what they're doing coming up at the end of the show. This is the PCC Multiverse. Coming up next, it's Jason Todd Feinberg from Honey Queen. He's going to be talking about Slender Man as it hits theaters this weekend. This is the PCC Multiverse. Coming up next, it's our good friend Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Pater podcast talking about what running backs you should key in on in your upcoming fantasy football draft. This is the PCC Multiverse. And we're back to close out the show. This is the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glasser from Pop Culture Cosmos, along with my good friend, Mr. Josh Peterson from Humanica Media. Just want to tell everybody out there, if you need a listing of where we're at, where we're being played, because we're on radio 7 days a week, you just got to check us out at Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook or Pop Culture Cosmos on Twitter. You check us out, you'll see a schedule right there, and you can see the listings of where we're being played. If you go to our Facebook page, there is a pin post as well on many of the podcast networks, because we're on over 30 podcast networks, and many of them are listed as well on that listing on our Pop Culture Cosmos Facebook page. Just also want to give a shout out to our good friends, not only at Rob McCallum Films, which has a movie which has The Power of Grayskull, The Definitive History of He-Man coming up, Also as well, Retro City Games. Give our good friends at Wheelie Q barbecue sauces and rubs. And remember, there's a code for 15% off. You just need to listen to our podcast, and you'll be able to get a taste of what that is. And also, what's coming up as well for people who are supporting the show.
Wait, what am I supposed to say?
Our new sponsor.
Oh, we haven't officially announced it yet.
Then we will keep it under wraps. Then want to make sure everybody just gives them support, because they give us the same kind of love, and we truly appreciate them for doing so. Plus, also you listening to us and checking us out as well. So, Josh, before we head on out and talk about what's going on with the Oscars, any updates on what's going on with your great experience known as Humanica Media?
Just a new Topicocalypse that dropped this morning, and check it out. It's about sporting superstitions. So like people have traditions before games, whether it's baseball, hockey, football. I guess hockey players, we have the playoff beards. Sport players have the pacing the dugout a certain amount of times, or like carving things on the bleachers and stuff like that. So we
rally caps,
yep, or people throwing squids on the ice. We talk about all that, and we talk about some of our things, and we ask ourselves, like, is this a weird type of obsessive compulsive disorder, or is it, or are we just too afraid to risk if like something works? I made this joke to Brian. I said, hey, so if someone in soccer before the big game accidentally like wet their pants, would they have to wet their pants before every game? So yeah, there's more to that, but you can check it out in the
episode. Check it out where? I'm sorry.
Oh, you can check it on Podbean, iTunes, podcast.com, all the usual suspects.
Fair enough. That is again the Topicocalypse podcast. Check it out. It's from our friends at Humanica Media. So, Josh, before we head on out, I got to ask you, my friend, did you see the thing that's going on with the Oscars? Because for some reason, I'm assuming it's ratings related, and the fact that their ratings have gone down in recent times. They are now trying to reach out to a broader audience by offering, get this, drum roll please. Oh, no drum roll needed. Okay, that was horrible. So, but to get this, they're now offering, as far as along with their categories of Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, all that stuff, they're going with a popular movie category, which to me is just devalues what the Oscar is, if that's the case going forward, especially if for films that actually do well at the box office, they're going to be pigeonholed into that category instead of a Best Picture category. I think it really just undermines what they're talking about. In recent years, they've expanded the Best Picture list to hopefully include many of those popular films. I just don't get it. I just don't buy it. I think it's a wrong move for the Oscars and the Academy. What are your thoughts? Like I said, I'm going to bring up some examples here in a minute on examples of the Best Pictures that have actually garnered a nice chunk of change over the years. Share me your thoughts on the actual decision that was made by the Academy to say, hey, we need to have a popular films category, and as far as a best popular film, and kind of deviating away from the Best Picture category in and of itself.
Yeah, of course. I think it's a good opportunity for a lot of films that wouldn't normally be considered for an Oscar to kind of get something, because let's be honest, like the Oscars are a lot of very snobby films. It's a lot of things that people are going to watch, but just because they want to be relevant and say like, hey, I watched this film and I feel that should not have gotten that, or that should have gotten that. It's for Oscar parties, most of them. And then on the other side, it's also, I think it's a dangerous thing, because it's going to get another one of those things. The Oscars got a lot of criticism this year for being far too social and not being unbiased in their I guess their choices or whatever. So it's going to cause division, I think, even more so than they have now, because last year was already like the most what underviewed Oscars that have ever been. So we're running into this problem where like all these movies, it's like either you have one side saying, oh, there's too many white people movies, or there's too many African American or ethnic or gender or whatever you want to call it type movies. And I think that this is just another. It's dangerous because it's going to cause a lot of that type of discussion, but it's also going to be, make people wonder, is this a ploy by the Oscars to get more publicity? I'm on the fence about it, man. Like there's another conversation for another time, but I don't really have much respect for the Oscars anymore. I would like to see some of like the independent category get opened up a little bit more than, the few that are in there. I would like It'd be nice if there's a system where normal people were voting for these films instead of a panel of judges doing it. What do you think of that idea?
I would prefer that. I would prefer that over what they're talking about with a most popular film category. I would prefer independent films being singled out to give them a shine, because when it comes to the Oscars, most of those popular films are already out of the cinema, and they're already, most of them, on DVD or Blu-ray, and they're already garnered a name through word of mouth or just because of their box office success. So they don't need any help from the actual Oscars. We both know why they're doing this, is because they want people to be drawn in with this category that loved all those films so much. And for us, that, I mean, what defines a popular film anyways? John Wick was a low budget low budget action film. It garnered between 100 to 200 million dollars. Does that make it a popular film? Or, I mean, does that make it a popular film? And let's say Solo, that garnered almost $400 million worldwide at the box office, but that's considered a failure. But would that be considered as a popular film? Where does that definition come in? It just creates a lot more confusion. And I understand why that they're doing this. They're doing this for ratings. They want people to be drawn back in, that watch the latest Star Wars, that watch the latest Jurassic Park, or some great movie that's maybe considered for this category that they really followed during the course of the past year. But to me, it creates quite to me, it whittles everything down. It dilutes what the Oscars is all about and takes away from the best film category, which is where, if a film is really good, whether it's popular or not, then it should go there. I know there's been a few films that have been nominated. I think the last billion-dollar earner at the box office, or close to it anyways, is The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, that won for Best Picture. There's still a lot of these films, Gladiator, Chicago, Beautiful Mind, they've all scored very good with the box office. When it comes to others, such as Argo, that did very well at the box office as well. I mean, there are films out there that over the years that have won the Best Picture that actually have done very well at the box office, and should not be pigeonholed into that type of category, and instead should be honored in the Best Picture category. And I know there's going to be films going forward, if this popular film category stays in place, that's going to be put there as opposed to where it should be, the Best Picture category. Let me ask you this, because I like your idea of the independent films having their own category and being singled out. That would probably be more acceptable to me. What if a film like Blade Runner 2049, which was our Best Picture of the year last year, what if that had been considered only for a popular film category as opposed to being considered in the regular film category? I'm assuming it just narrowly missed out, because I know it was favored on other categories. In fact, won in other categories at the Oscars. What are your thoughts on maybe a movie like that, just because it garnered over $200 million worldwide, being shunned out of, let's say, something like the Best Picture category because it made too much money?
Well, see, that's the thing though. It's not, it doesn't even really, the Oscars don't have anything to do with money and fan base, because it's just a panel of people voting. Like, we really have no say in this. And the thing about movies is, much like politics, they're very divisive. Like, I know a lot of people who's like, I've disagreed with them on movies and they have not spoken to me for 2 weeks. So it's I don't like the system of the Oscars, because you have a lot of people who are movie critics are very snobby. Like I will, you know my opinion on critics, myself included. It's just it's I don't the systems doesn't work for me because it's not you don't have the average Joes saying, "Hey, I like this movie," or "I didn't like this movie," and the average Joe's voices are the ones that should be heard on the Oscars. So even if they introduce something like Best Picture category, you're still gonna have this panel of snobby judges voting for it, and it still doesn't work because you're still gonna run back to the problem that these are all films that people just don't watch. They'll have a popular movie category, but that's not enough to get the average Joe to sit there and watch the Oscars.
I agree with you, but I still think there's if they keep this category going, there's going to be films that are going to be pigeonholed in that popular film category that deserve to be mentioned or at least listed within that best picture category. I'm assuming there's going to be some bleed over and crossover. I'm hoping that that's going to be the case if they continue that, but it's still really just, it kind of irks me just the fact that, okay, you're the best picture of the year, but you're not the popular film of the year. That just, if I'm winning the best picture of the year and I see that happening, I don't know, it just kind of just makes everything kind of confusing. It waters everything down. I think the fact that they opened it up to more nominees on the Best Picture category was a step in the right direction. If you want to talk about doing something for popular films and you think they're being shut out, add add a couple more spots where a popular film is going to be included in it. Make it 10. Make it 10 nominees for the Best Picture and then go from there.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. That would make it more accessible. But again, like I just can't stand behind the fact that there's not people who actually like to watch movies voting for what wins these awards. And that's going to be until that changes. I just will not care about the Oscars at all. The only reason I got so hyped about it last year is because, something I actually enjoyed made it. But I have a problem with the system. The system needs to change. And I don't think that I honestly, like, in my opinion, new people aren't going to be watching this just because, there's a Star Wars film or Jurassic Park film or something. That's not enough for somebody to sit through a 2 to 3 hour broadcast.
Oh, it's not 2 hours. It hasn't been 2 hours for a long time.
Yeah, but I mean, whatever it is, it's not enough to bring in like, say even if I weren't like part of a pop culture website or whatever, I wouldn't waste time watching the Oscars. I'd rather sit down and play a video game or watch a movie or something. Why do I care? Why give me a reason to care and don't just throw in another category. Give me a reason to care. Like it's kind of like how American Idol people get to vote on things, and that's I understand why that has such a huge following. But with the Oscars, I just don't care because there's no average Joes have a stake in it. You just got a bunch of film snobs, like I mentioned earlier, who get to have the pick of the crop of what movies they think should win. And every film critic has an agenda of some kind. So the system doesn't work for me.
I can see why you're saying that, and I can't say I disagree with you on that because it's not just the fact that there's film critics, voting on it. That's anybody who's won an Oscar, people within the industry, they also get to vote on it as well. So, and we all know about the Hollywood movie industry, about it's not what you know, it's who you know, and maybe there's some votes going one way or the other, or favoritism going on. I know that takes a lot. I know that there's a possibility that that can take place as well because it's a very uneven type of uneven type of voting process when it comes to how it's judged, how it's perceived. I know as far as the way it's promotion, as far as movie companies that try to promote their products as being contenders for those Best Picture and other categories. I know there's a lot of stake in that, and the advertising. We see all the trade papers and whatnot. So I understand there is a vested interest by many for their movie or their product to get included in that Best Picture category. And now that they've created a popular film category, it kind of, to me, like I said, waters down or dilutes it, but it now gives an opportunity for other films to be highlighted, which may not be shown off at that 3 or 4 hour long presentation, which I guess looks great when you're throwing it onto the when you're throwing it onto a DVD or Blu-ray box, and you could say it included an Oscar nomination or an Oscar win that you may have not normally got, that you may have not gotten under previous circumstances. But hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles right now. The Oscars are going to include a popular film category, and for better or worse, it's there. And for those who are really into it and really are excited about that opportunity, about popular films now getting a different light, good for you. I'm happy for you. But I think, like I said, a better alternative would be increasing to 10 nominees, because there's so many hundreds of films that are released each year. Why not just having 2 more, 3 more included each and every year nominees, which would probably include a popular film or 2, would not be such a bad idea. And I think that would probably be a better alternative and a better way to, I guess, keep the integrity of the Academy Awards and make a lot more people happy overall. What are your thoughts on the Academy Awards and the Oscars making and creating a new popular film category? Do you think it waters down the overall process, or do you like it? Do you like it, and do you think this gives a better chance for films from the Star Wars, Jurassic Park, or any of the popular films we see each year, a better chance to get recognized for the quality work they do? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. So, my friend, it's been another great episode indeed. I want to thank Chris Daly from Fresh Media Works, Jason Todd Feinberg from Honey Queen, and also Tyler Baker, of course, from the Fantasy Football Pater podcast. And once again, for your latest fantasy football updates, stay tuned to our shows, Pop Culture Cosmos and PCC Multiverse, plus also his show, the Fantasy Football Pater podcast, which is coming this fall to the Pop Culture Cosmos channel as well. So, Josh, on the way out, my friend, you got anything planned for this weekend? Because I know the box office is going to be kind of different as it gets closer to, for a lot of people, the beginning of the school, if they've not started already, with this weekend being very interesting. If Mission Impossible Fallout can hold on to the #1 slot for a 3rd week, or can movies like The Meg, Slender Man, or Black Klansman get enough publicity and get enough of a goodwill from fans out there to go ahead and make headway in the box office this weekend? What are your thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, from what I understand about The Meg, it's not, people don't think it's a good movie, but they're saying it's a fun movie. So we haven't really had a movie like that in a long time. So we'll have to wait and see what the numbers are. But that's probably the only thing left in theaters until, September, October, that I might have any interest in going to see.
Gotta love that shark movie. Gotta love that shark movie, my friend. Gotta love that shark movie. Well, but it's not Jaws, so we'll have to wait and see. I know, like you said, the reviews have not been strong on it, but it could perform this weekend if it reaches the right kind of audience. And before we head on out, I gotta make an announcement here. This is one of the first times ever in the history of Pop Culture Cosmos there has not been a messy bed in Josh's studio. What's up with that, my friend?
Just working on a few things. The view might change a lot here soon, so just stay tuned for more on that. I'm not moving or anything, but just doing a little remodeling, make it a little more studio friendly. So just I'll have more to say on that later, as well as there's some more stuff coming from the Pop Culture Cosmos later that we will be speaking about here soon.
Sounds good, my friend. I'm missing that messy bed already, man. It's just those disheveled sheets and all that. Just I don't know, man.
Times change.
All right, fine. They're in the wash. For Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.